All right, so this is Chapter 1, Lesson 2, Complex Fractions and Unit Rates for grade math. So, you can see a couple examples of complex fractions. So the first one I have is 20 divided by 1/2, 1/20 divided by 1/2, or 1/2 divided by 20. So the definition for a complex fraction are fractions with a numerator, denominator, or both that are also fractions. Complex fractions are simplified when both the numerator and the denominator are integers, meaning they're whole numbers. Okay, so you don't want any fractions, you don't want decimals when you're dealing with complex fractions. Okay, so in these two blanks, you're going to write complex fractions. Okay, so complex fractions are fractions with a numerator, denominator, or both that are also fractions. Okay, and they're only simplified when there's no fractions left other than the original. Okay. All right, so here's an example that we have. We want to simplify 1/4 divided by 2. Now, you want to be very careful when you're dealing with complex fractions. A lot of times, the line that separates the numerator from the denominator is very small. So you want to look at it and make sure that you're reading it correctly. So that's the first thing. A lot of times the fraction, when you're dealing with a complex fraction, the main fraction bar will be slightly bigger than the other fraction bars. Okay? So in this case, you can see that the one between the 1 and the 4 is smaller than the one between the 4 and the 2. That's how I know it's 1/4 divided by 2. Okay? So I can recall that a fraction can also be written as a division problem. So same type of thing that we've done probably since 5th and 6th grade. Okay? So I have 1/4 over 2, which can be written as 1/4 divided by 2. Okay? Now here comes KCF. So KCF, it does not stand for Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's KFC, totally different thing. Okay? So KCF is keep, change, flip. Okay? So I keep the first number the same. I change division sign to multiplication. And then I flip the second number. Okay? Very important that you're flipping the second number, okay, not just flipping a fraction. You want to flip the second number. Okay? So, if I were to solve this, 1/4 over 2, I would take 1/4. Okay? I keep that one the same. I'm going to change my division sign to multiplication, and I'm going to flip my second number. Now 2 is my second number, which means I need to put it over 1. 2 can be written as 2 over 1, so that means I have to flip it so it becomes 1/2. Okay? So now I have 1/4 times 1/2, which I can multiply through. 1 times 1 gives me 1, 4 times 2 gives me 8. So if I were to actually simplify this, it would give me 1/8. So here's an example down here. It says Josiah can jog 1 1/3 miles in 1/4 hour. Find his average speed in miles per hour. Write a rate that compares the number of miles to hours. So when I'm doing this, I'm going to set it up like we did with our last problems from the previous lesson. 1 1/3 mile over a 1/4 hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1 1/3 divided by 1/4. I'm going to change 1 1/3 from a mixed number into an improper fraction. So if you remember how to do that, you take 3 times 1 plus 1. So you take your denominator times your whole number plus your numerator. So I have 4/3 when that's done. 3 times 1 gives me 3. 3 plus 1 is 4. So I get 4/3 divided by 1/4. Now I'm going to apply keep, change, flip. I keep my first number the same. 4/3 stays the same. Change my division sign to a multiplication sign. Then flip my second number. Well, 1/4 becomes 4 over 1. Then I just multiply through. 4 times 4 gives me 16. 3 times 1 gives me 3. And then I can change that back into a proper fraction. So 3 goes into 16 5 times with 1 left over, so I get 5 1/3. This keep, change, flip is also called multiplying by the reciprocal. So you might hear that term as well, but it's multiplying by the reciprocal. All right, there are 3 try it out problems below. Go ahead, pause the video, try out the try problems, and then when you come back, we'll go over the answers together. All right, now that you've had a chance to try out the try it problems on your own, let's go over the answers together. So the first one that we're going to look at is the one right underneath the try it problem. Okay? It says simplify the following complex fraction. I have 2/3 over 7. So I'm going to rewrite this as 2/3 divided by 7 over 1. Remember, any whole number can be written as a fraction. You just have to put 1 in the denominator. Okay, so now I'm going to use keep, change, flip. I'm going to take 2/3, keep that the same, change my division sign to a multiplication, flip my second number. 2 times 1 gives me 2, 3 times 7 gives me 21. Now I can't simplify this any further, so my answer is going to be 2 over 21. Okay. My second problem says Mr. Ito is spreading mulch in his yard. He spreads 4 2/3 square yards in 2 hours. How much square yards can he mulch per hour? So I want to do a couple of different things here. Remember, last lesson we learned about simplifying, finding the unit rate. So the first thing I want to do is I want to change 4 2/3, right, from a mixed number to an improper fraction. So I'm going to take 3 times 4, which gives me 12, plus 2 gives me 14 over 3. Okay. And then I'm going to write it over 2. Okay. Now the reason I did this, he's spreading the 4 2/3 square yards in 2 hours. So when I want to find for 1 hour, which means I need to find a unit rate. Well, we talked about unit rates are just dividing. All I want to do is have 1 in the denominator. In order to do that, I need to divide. So I have 14/3 over 2, which I can rewrite as 14/3 divided by 2 over 1. Remember, 2 is a whole number. It can be rewritten as a fraction, just over 1. So I'm going to keep the 14/3, change division to a multiplication, and flip my second number. So I get 14/3 times 1/2. When I multiply this through, I get 14 over 6. Okay, so I get 4 2/3, which equals 14/3. I put that over 2. Kept, change, flip, so I get 14 over 6. Well, I'm going to change this back into a a mixed number. 6 goes into 14. I can actually simplify this by dividing both of these by 2. So I get 7/3. Okay. So when I do that, 7/3. Okay. 3 goes into 7 2 times with 1 left over, so I get 2 1/3. So that's my answer for Mr. Ito. It's 2 1/3. Now for our final problem, I have Aubrey can walk 4.5 miles in 1.5 hours. Find her average speed in miles per hour. So she walks, we're going to go ahead and use the whiteboard again. Okay. So she walks 4.5 miles in 1.5 hours, and I want to find her average speed. So the first thing I want to do is change both of these into improper fractions. 4.5, 2 times 4 gives me 8, plus 1 is 9. So this gives me 9 halves. 1 1/2 is 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. 3 halves. Okay? Now I'm going to rewrite this as a division problem. Okay? Everything stays the same. So now I apply keep, change, flip. So I keep my first number, change my sign to multiplication, flip my second fraction. Okay. I can notice that I can actually simplify some things here. So 9 and 3, for example, 9 has a factor of 3, so I can divide this by 3, which gives me 3. 3 divided by 3 gives me 1. Same with the 2's. Both of the 2's are factors, so I can simplify to that. So I get 3 over 1, or just 3. Now, if you didn't want to do that, if you didn't want to simplify first, you can still do it. You'll just have to simplify in the end. 9 times 2 gives me 18. 2 times 3 gives me 6. 18 divided by 6 still gives me 3. Okay, so in the end, this one, Aubrey can walk 4.5 miles in 1.5 hours. Her average speed in miles per hour is going to be 3. Okay, so 3 miles per hour. And that is the end of lesson 2.